Anyone who grows up hearing stories about powerful families thinks they understand how things work: loyalty, legacy, bloodlines. But the truth is, when money and status get involved, reality becomes something much stranger. I learned that the hard way. I was taken from my real family when I was barely old enough to remember anything. My childhood wasn't filled with luxury or comfort, it was survival, repetition, and a life so small it barely felt like living. Years passed like that, until one day, everything changed. I was found. After 2 decades, my so-called real life was finally within reach. I expected warmth, relief, maybe even happiness. Instead, the moment I stepped into that massive house, I walked straight into a scene that didn't make any sense. Right in the center of the room was a guy about my age, crying like his world was collapsing. And surrounding him, my parents, and my sister, were treating him like he was the one who mattered. Like he was the one they were afraid to lose. No one noticed me at first. And honestly, I wasn't paying much attention to them either. My eyes were scanning everything: the structure, the layout, the weak points. The place looked expensive, sure, but it wasn't secure. Not even close. Open sight lines, exposed windows, poor defensive positioning. For a family with this kind of wealth, it was careless. Then there was the noise. The crying. Loud. Uncontrolled. Annoying. My head was already pounding, and the last thing I needed was someone acting like they were in a tragedy. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. This was supposed to be my home. But something felt off. Before I could even say a word, the entire room went silent. Every single person turned to look at me. Not with curiosity. Not with joy. With fear. And then, just like that, the crying guy let out a strange sound, and collapsed. Unconscious. No warning. No build-up. Just dropped. I stood there, still holding my suitcase, wondering what kind of place I had just walked into. It didn't take long before things got even stranger. The guy, Makoto, apparently, made a dramatic entrance from upstairs not long after, dragging a suitcase that was way too big for what he actually needed. It looked heavy, but the way he handled it told a different story. It wasn't packed. It was for show. Every step, every movement, it all felt rehearsed. Behind him, the 3 people who were supposed to be my family rushed after him like they were trying to stop something irreversible. My mother reached him first, grabbing his arm like he might disappear if she let go. My father followed, his voice filled with urgency. And my sister, her reaction wasn't sadness. It was anger. But not directed at him. At me. That's when it clicked. In this house, I wasn't the one returning. I was the one intruding. And whatever role I was supposed to play here, someone else had already been living it for 20 years. Kick straight into his midsection, sending him stumbling back before he could touch me again. There was no time for his theatrics. My focus locked onto one thing: airway obstruction. She was already losing color. Hands clawing at her throat. Panic everywhere, but no one actually doing anything useful. Typical. I moved behind her, wrapped my arms around her upper abdomen, and positioned my fist just below her ribcage. One sharp pull. Nothing. Second thrust, harder. A muffled sound escaped her throat, but the blockage didn't clear. Her body was going limp. Third time. I tightened my grip and drove the force upward with everything I had. A chunk of food shot out onto the table. She collapsed forward, gasping violently, dragging in air like someone who had just come back from the edge. The room froze. For a moment, the only sound was her breathing. Then chaos returned. My father held her shoulders, calling her name over and over. My sister stood there, stunned, like she couldn't process what had just happened. And Makoto? He looked at me like I had just done something unforgivable. Not relief. Not gratitude. Fear, mixed with something darker. I stepped back, wiping my hands casually. Crisis over. But instead of thanks, what I got was silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. Then, what was that? My father asked, his voice low, uncertain. I glanced at him. Basic first aid. Simple. Direct. Nothing special. But the way they looked at me, you'd think I had just revealed something they weren't ready to see. My mother was still catching her breath, her face pale, eyes avoiding mine. My sister finally snapped out of it. Don't act like some kind of hero, she said sharply. If you hadn't been causing trouble, Mom wouldn't have choked in the first place. I stared at her for a second. No logic. No awareness. Just blame. Makoto seized the moment immediately, stepping forward with that same fragile expression, like he was the only one who truly cared. Brother, even if you don't like me, you don't have to take it out on everyone else, he said softly. This family has already suffered enough. There it was again. Twisting everything. Turning himself into the victim. I let out a slow breath, my head starting to throb again. This place wasn't just dysfunctional. It was delusional. I looked around the table, the expensive food, the perfect setting, the people who were supposed to be my family. And not a single one of them could see what was right in front of them. Not the fake performance. Not the manipulation. Not even the fact that I had just saved her life. Fine. If that's how they wanted to play it, then I'd stop holding back. Being treated like a priceless treasure shattered on impact, the sound echoing across the silent dining hall. No one spoke. Not even Makoto. He just stood there, frozen, staring at the broken pieces scattered across the floor like something inside him had cracked along with it. For the first time since I walked into that house, he didn't perform. He didn't cry. He didn't say a word. My mother's grip on his wrist tightened slightly before she let go, her expression no longer soft or hesitant, but firm. "Enough," she said quietly. That single word carried more weight than anything else she had said all day. My father exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples like he was finally starting to see the situation for what it was. My sister, on the other hand, looked completely shaken, her usual arrogance replaced with something closer to fear. As for me, I just stood there, watching, trying to figure out what had changed. Because something definitely had. The atmosphere. The way they looked at me. It wasn't just hostility anymore. It was caution. Careful, measured, almost like they were afraid of pushing me too far. Interesting. Makoto suddenly dropped to his knees, his voice trembling as he finally broke the silence. I'm sorry, he said, though it wasn't clear who he was apologizing to. His eyes flickered between my parents, my sister, and me. For once, there was no calculation behind them. Only confusion. Only uncertainty. The perfect image he had been maintaining all this time had taken a hit, and he didn't know how to recover. My sister stepped forward instinctively, like she wanted to defend him again. But she stopped. That earlier slap had done more than just sting, it had drawn a line. And for the first time, she hesitated. I glanced down at the broken watch, then back at them. "I didn't want it," I said calmly. "I just wanted to see who you'd choose." No one responded. But their silence said enough. My mother looked at me, something complicated in her eyes, guilt, maybe. Or regret. "George," she started, but the words didn't come. Because what could she even say? 20 years. That kind of distance doesn't disappear in a single night. I turned away from the table, no longer interested in the ruined meal or the tension hanging in the air. "I'm done here," I said, heading toward the stairs. No one tried to stop me. Behind me, I could feel their eyes following every step I took. Not with rejection this time. Not entirely. But with something far more uncertain. Because now they understood one thing clearly, I wasn't someone they could control. And I definitely wasn't the kind of person who would quietly accept being pushed aside. As I reached the second floor, I paused for a brief moment, glancing down at the hall below. This house. This so-called family. It wasn't going to be peaceful. Not even close. But that was fine. I had survived far worse places than this. And if they thought I'd walk away again, they were wrong. This time, I was staying. Lucky. One of them had taken fragments straight to the eyes. The other's face was torn up badly enough that even the doctors weren't sure how much could be restored. The incident spread through the banquet like wildfire. What had started as a celebration instantly turned into whispered speculation, nervous glances, and people quietly re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about the Wang family's long-lost son. By the time my parents arrived at the police station, the story had already twisted into 10 different versions. Some said I was defending myself. Others said I went too far. A few didn't say anything at all. They just watched. My father handled the situation personally. Calm. Controlled. The same man who had built an empire from nothing now sat across from officers, negotiating outcomes like it was just another business deal. My mother, on the other hand, looked shaken. Not because of what happened. But because of what she had seen. That footage. That moment. The way I moved without hesitation. The way I didn't panic. The way I smiled. When I was finally brought out, her eyes locked onto me immediately. "Are you hurt?" she asked, stepping forward. I shook my head. "Then why would you do something like that?" Her voice trembled slightly. I looked at her for a second. "They were going to hurt me," I said simply. That was the truth. Just not the whole truth. Silence followed. My father exhaled slowly, then spoke in a low voice. "You defended yourself. But methods like that, they come with consequences." I didn't respond. Because I already knew that. Back where I came from, hesitation got you killed. Here? Apparently, it got you judged. After a long discussion, money changed hands, connections were pulled, and statements were adjusted. By the time everything was settled, the official story was clean. Self-defense. Excessive, maybe, but justified. The other families, however, weren't as easy to manage. Those injured weren't just random troublemakers. They had backgrounds, influence, pride, and now, all of that had been humiliated in one night. When we returned home, the atmosphere had completely shifted again. This time, even the staff avoided eye contact with me. Word travels fast in circles like this. Makoto stayed quiet for once. No performance. No fake concern. Just distance. Willow, however, couldn't hide it. The way she looked at me now, it wasn't just anger anymore. It was fear. Real fear. I walked past them like nothing had happened. Because to me, nothing had. That night, I stood by the window in my room, looking out at the city lights stretching into the distance. Different world. Different rules. But at the core, still the same. Weak people provoke. Strong people respond. And consequences follow. Behind me, I heard a faint knock on the door. My mother. She stepped inside slowly, like she wasn't sure how close she was allowed to get. "George," she said softly, "you don't have to handle everything alone anymore." I didn't turn around. Didn't move. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said quietly, "I'm used to it." That was all. Because some habits don't disappear just because you finally found your way home. For a split second, all that confidence vanished. The relaxed posture, the casual smirk, the arrogance he had been showing just moments ago, it all collapsed instantly. His leg dropped from the table, his back straightened, and his eyes locked onto me like he'd just seen something he wasn't prepared for. "You?" he muttered, his voice no longer steady. The room fell silent. Willow looked between us, clearly confused. "You know him?" I didn't answer her. I kept my gaze on him. It had been a long time, but I didn't forget faces. Especially not his. Back then, he wasn't sitting in a bright conference room negotiating contracts. He was somewhere far less civilized. And definitely not someone you'd expect to see playing businessman. I tilted my head slightly. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said calmly. Schmidt let out a dry laugh, but it sounded forced. "Yeah, life takes strange turns," he replied, though his eyes kept flickering, calculating, uneasy. That reaction alone told me everything I needed to know. He remembered. Good. Willow frowned, her patience clearly running thin. "George, if you're not here for work, leave. This is an important meeting." Still, I ignored her. Instead, I took a slow step forward. "Raising prices, changing terms, dragging things out," I said, almost casually. "That doesn't sound like your style." Schmidt's jaw tightened. "Business is business," he said quickly. I stared at him for a moment longer, then gave a faint smile. Not friendly. Not warm. Just enough to make the tension in the room spike. "Right," I said. "Business." The air felt heavier now. Even Willow could sense it. Something about this wasn't normal anymore. Schmidt suddenly cleared his throat and stood up. "Actually, I think we can revisit the terms," he said, his tone shifting completely. "No need to complicate things. Let's keep the original agreement." Willow blinked, caught off guard. "What? You were just—" "I've reconsidered," he cut in quickly. That was fast. Too fast. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Because everyone in that room understood one thing now. This wasn't about negotiation anymore. This was about me. Willow slowly turned her head toward me, suspicion and confusion mixing in her expression. "What exactly is going on here?" she asked. I finally glanced at her. "Nothing," I said. Then I looked back at Schmidt. "Just an old acquaintance." He forced a smile. But it didn't reach his eyes. Not even close. And in that moment, I realized something interesting. The past I had tried to leave behind hadn't disappeared. It had followed me here. Quietly. Patiently. Waiting for the right moment to show itself again. Resentful to the core, wasn't the type to disappear quietly. He wasn't running away. He was waiting. People like him don't accept losing everything overnight. Not status, not comfort, not identity. When that kind of person falls, they don't reflect, they scheme. And the more they lose, the more dangerous they become. Days passed. Then weeks. On the surface, everything returned to normal. The company kept growing. My position became more stable. At home, things were calmer. Warmer, even. Like everyone had silently agreed to move forward. But I didn't buy it. Because silence like this? It's never empty. It's the kind that hides something underneath. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I noticed something off. A car. Parked across the street. Engine running. Same spot I'd seen it the day before. And the day before that. I didn't react. Just walked past it like I hadn't noticed. But in the reflection of a glass window, I caught a glimpse of the driver. Head lowered. Cap pulled down. Trying too hard not to be seen. Amateur. That alone told me something important. If Makoto was involved, he wasn't working alone. Because this This wasn't his style. That night, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I took a detour. A long one. Through crowded streets, narrow alleys, places where it's easy to disappear, or confirm if someone's following you. And sure enough, they were. Not 1. 3. Keeping distance. Switching positions. Trying to stay subtle. I almost laughed. This wasn't subtle. This was bait. Which meant one thing, they wanted me to notice. They wanted me to react. So I did the opposite. I led them. Out of the city lights. Into a quieter part of town. Fewer people. Fewer witnesses. Exactly the kind of place someone would choose if they were planning something. Or walking into it. I stopped under a flickering streetlight and finally turned around. "Come out," I said calmly. No movement at first. Then, footsteps. 3 figures stepped out from the shadows. And behind them, a 4th. Slow. Confident. Familiar. Makoto. He looked different. Not the polished, pampered version from before. Rougher. Eyes darker. Smile gone. But the resentment? Still there. Stronger than ever. "So, you finally showed up," I said. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "No bodyguards today?" he asked. I shrugged. Didn't feel necessary. A faint smile touched his lips. "Good," he said softly. "Makes things simpler." The air turned heavy. Not tense. Not chaotic. Just inevitable. I looked at the 3 men beside him. Then back at him. "You really think this is enough?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just stared at me. Then said, "I don't need much to deal with you." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the streetlight flickered again. And everything shifted. They stared at me like the ground had just disappeared beneath their feet. No anger. No shouting. Just fear. The kind that comes when everything you believed in collapses all at once. My mother's hands trembled violently, the porcelain bowl slipping from her fingers and shattering on the floor. My father tried to stand, but his legs gave out beneath him, forcing him back into the chair. Their eyes never left me. Searching. Begging. Denying. As if they were hoping, desperately, that what they had just heard wasn't real. I tilted my head slightly. "Is something wrong?" I asked, my voice calm, almost concerned. But inside, there was no hesitation left. No doubt. No attachment. Because the truth is, by the time I took everything from them, there was nothing left worth keeping. Not the family. Not the name. Not even the past. They had built their empire on betrayal. And now, they were tasting the result of it. My father opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. Maybe an explanation. Maybe an apology. Maybe a lie. But no words came out. Only a weak, broken sound. My mother reached toward me, her fingers shaking, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. Regret? Fear? Or the realization that the child they thought they had finally found was never coming back. I stood up slowly, adjusting my sleeves. The room felt quieter now. Heavier. Like everything had already ended. "You should rest," I said lightly. "The doctors here are excellent." A pause. Then I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I could hear uneven breathing, fading strength, the slow collapse of 2 people who had once controlled everything. I didn't look back. Because there was nothing left to see. By the time I stepped outside, the night air felt different. Lighter. Cleaner. Like a chapter had finally closed. Wang Corporation was mine. The past was buried. And anyone who had ever stood in my way was gone. I walked down the path without stopping. Without hesitation. Without regret. Because in the end, this was never a story about family. It was a story about survival. And I had won.